Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for visiting Rabbani Research. We will talk on future of recruiting today, and let's see what we can gain from this. The future of recruiting. Role of recruiting. The future of recruiting is it is a challenging and pivotal time to be a recruiting leader. Between the uncertain economy and new trends reshaping the world of work, you have the opportunity to become a true change maker at your organization. You will have to be strategic, adaptable, and acutely in tune with talent. What candidates want, what skills they possess, and how their careers can grow with your business. To help you prepare, this report offers predictions based on dozens of interviews with global talent leaders, surveys of thousands of recruiting pros, and analysis of billions of data points generated on LinkedIn. The role of recruiting. Recruiting will drive business critical changes. You were rocked by the pandemic and rose to the challenge of the great reshuffle. There is no question that recruiting is becoming more strategic, and 70% of pros say the team can claim a seat at the proverbial table. But now recruiting leaders have the opportunity to actually change the seats at the table, says Microsoft Bernard Baumel. You are going to truly change the table itself. As a change maker, your influence will be felt to fine-tuning your employer brand. Recruiting will have more say over pay. Rising inflation, stagnating real wages, and a stubbornly competitive labor market. With these three trends on a collision course and compensation ranked as the number one top priority for candidates globally, something has got to give. The feedback loop between recruiting, finance, and diversity, equity, and inclusion on discussions of company needs to be more agile. Recruiting leaders can help their companies stay ahead of the curve by raising their conversation today. As the leader with the clearest view of candidate priorities, labor market dynamics, and real-time recruiting performance at your company, you are in the best position to lead the conversation about pay and its business impact. From championing company models that favor skills to retain your top talent by pushing for pay increases that keep pace with inflation. Recruiters will double down on employer branding as talent regains leverage. Recruiting leaders know the competition for talent has not let up, even as hiring has slowed down. While less hiring typically means less power for workers, recruiting teams see that dynamic swinging back in the opposite direction over time. 64% predict that the future of recruiting will be more favorable of candidates and employees over the next 5 years. That's why refining and conveying a clear, compelling employer value proposition is more important than ever. With most recruiting budgets expected to shrink or stagnant, employer branding stands alone as the only line item where a majority expect an increased investment this year. But investing in employer branding won't get you far if you don't work to understand talent's top priorities and authentically walk the walk. Recruiters will need a more strategic set of soft skills. The skills companies need are changing fast, as even if you are not changing your job, your job is most likely changing on you. Recruiting teams themselves are no exception. Adaptability, problem solving, and business acumen rank among the top 5 soft skills recruiters will need in the future. As strategic partners, they will need to adjust on the fly and find solutions that ladder up to overarching business goals. As companies align around skills first hiring, recruiting teams will have to consider which skills they value most in the workforce at large and within their own recruiting organizations. Recruiters will collaborate more with learning and development. The walls that once divided the recruiting and learning and development are coming down fast. While 3 out of 5 pros say TA pros say they are already working closely with learning and development, and even larger portion say they will still need to grow closer in the future. As recruiting leaders' portfolios expand to include things like internal mobility, skills fast hiring, and employee retention, they will need to cooperate more with learning and development to prepare internal talent for new roles. Identify skills gaps and ensure your company is a place people can grow their careers. You will hear the same from L&D professionals. 47% say they are working more closely with TA this year, according to for 2023. Those respondents also say that number one top focus area for learning and development will be aligning learning programs to business goals, where recruiting can play a complementary role in understanding what skills the company needs. Generative artificial intelligence will let recruiters focus on the human part of hiring. Generative artificial intelligence tools like chatgpt that intelligently generate content is a fascinating new technology that holds promise for talent professionals, many of whom believe it can help in time consuming tasks like drafting job descriptions and personalized messages to candidates, among others. While two-thirds, that is 68% of hirers surveyed in February 2023 said they were very hopeful or cautiously optimistic about the impact of GAI on recruiting, hiring, influencer Glenn Cathy characterizes himself as cautiously exuberant. He believes GAI can save a ton of time and let recruiters focus on the most human aspect of their jobs, that listening to candidates, understanding their desires, and helping them find a new job they feel good about. While GI may help draft content, it's crucial to keep a human in the loop, someone in the right to know how should always be there to carefully review and fine-tune generated content. You will still need to keep your hands on the wheel, Glenn says. Then comes economic uncertainty. Despite hiring headwinds, employers will remain committed to building a diverse workforce. In an uncertain economy, you might think employers would pull back on efforts. Fortunately, that's not the case. Though most recruiting pros say hiring overall has been negatively impacted, 3 out of 4 say that diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring is not being deprioritized. In fact, nearly 20% say it is higher priority now. Work on DEI goes back decades, but it becomes focal point for many in 2020, when a wave of companies, whether they deliver on that largely remains to be seen, and you might look at these survey results with the same skepticism. Employees, candidates, and consumers alike will diversify their workforces, pledge to make progress on diversity, hold businesses to their commitments. Employers will hire more contract workers as a hedge against uncertainty. As uncertainty grows, businesses need to be more nimble and responsive to sudden shifts in the market. To do so, employers may increasingly rely on contingent talent like contractors or gig workers, whose labor can be scaled up and down on demand. In the US, for instance, LinkedIn job posts for contract positions are growing much faster than job posts for full-time employees, which is relatively stable. You can see the dynamic at play within recruiting teams themselves, though the data suggests a more stable split. 22% of the companies expect to spend more on in-house recruiters, while 23% expect to invest more in external staffing firms. Next, employer branding. Companies will keep a closer eye on what candidates want most. The labor market remains tight. The talent is expected to retain the upper hand over the next 5 years. To stay competitive, employers will have to re-examine their employer branding and make sure it aligns with what candidates are looking for today. Every month, LinkedIn surveys over 20,000 members about the most important factors that weigh when considering a new job. The top priority for candidates today is excellent compensation and benefits by a fairly wide margin, followed by work-life balance and flexibility. And companies are also the two fastest growing priorities year over the year. There is much more to your employer brand than good pay and flexibility, and offering them may not make you stand out, but be warned, if you don't provide them, talent will take notice. Recruiting pros will recalibrate their pitches to candidates. You learned what candidates want in an employer, but how does that compare to what employers think candidates want? To find out, we gave around 2,000 recruiting pros the same survey questions already answered by 20,000 candidates and asked them to guess candidates' top priorities. Comparing the two sets of answers reveals some interesting misalignment. Recruiting pros tend to get tunnel vision on the most important priorities to the detriment of other still important factors. In reality, candidates' preferences are more diffuse and less top-heavy than a simple list might suggest. So instead of fixating on the particulars of your flexible work policy, home in on the end result, happy and inspired employees. And don't neglect other aspects of your company culture that foster that happiness. And rather than only focusing on how people can advance within your organization, show candidates how they can to elevate their career whether or not they choose to stay at your company. Genz will reward employers who value development and diversity. Genz professionals born later than 1996 are already a major part of the workforce. Many are just getting their careers off the ground, and their priorities reflect that Genz priorities are significantly different from their parents' generation, Generation X. Career advancement and gaining new skills are super important to younger workers. They are over 50% more likely to value moving up the ranks compared to General X. The younger generation is also much more focused on the importance of having an inclusive work environment. Skills first hiring. Skills first hiring will become the gold standard. Slowly but steadily, employers have begun to embrace skills first hiring, the practice of valuing a candidate's skills over more superficial signals like an impressive alma mater or previous employer. Since 2019, the share of recruiter searches on LinkedIn that include a skills filter has grown by 25%, and today recruiters are 50% more likely to search by skills than they are to search by years of experience. Now, skills first hiring is poised to be way of the future. Three-fourths of recruiting pros say it will be a priority at their company, but for some, their reach still exceeds their grasp. Only 64% feel they can accurately assess candidates' skills today. Clearly they will have some over the next few years. Skills first strategies will shine a light on overlooked talent. If you are not convinced yet that skills based hiring is the future, consider this. By being open to hiring candidates who don't have college degrees, you will be taking a big step forward in diversifying your workforce. There is a growing consensus that removing 4-year requirements is one of the most important things you can do to promote diversity. Research shows that workers who didn't go to college but have experience perform almost as well as college graduates. On critical measures, like today, one of the five jobs on the LinkedIn platform don't require a 4-year degree. That number is expected to grow as more employers look to hire people from a multitude of backgrounds who can bring different perspective to their organization. Companies will focus on mapping the skills employees have and need. Skills have become a critical currency, and companies will need greater visibility into what they do and don't have. Forward-thinking employers will map the skills of their workers as well as the skills needed to specific positions. A whopping 94% of recruiting pros told us that understanding employee skills is required to make informed talent decisions, though slightly less, that is 84%, say it is currently a priority at their company. Mapping employees' skills will help you do a better job spotting skills gap. It will also make it easier for you to match qualified workers within your organization with open roles. Employees in turn will have an easier time finding job opportunities that fit the capabilities. For this to work, however, TA teams must distinguish between which skills are truly must-haves for a role and which are merely nice to have. Internal mobility and upskilling. Business leaders will recognize the value of filling open roles with homegrown talent. Your company's next great hire might already be on the payroll. The shaky economy is forcing companies to look within more frequently when filling open positions. 75% of recruiting pros say internal recruiting will be important factor shaping the future recruiting over the next 5 years. Internal mobility provides big payoffs, starting with higher employee retention. LinkedIn data shows that employees stay at companies almost 2+ years longer if the employer is highly committed to internal hiring. There is also a growing probability that you will be adding internal mobility to your responsibilities. As someone who understands your company's talent needs and is skilled at sourcing, assessing and engaging with candidates, you are uniquely positioned to take on internal mobility. Upskilling will be a key tool for retaining a diverse workforce. With companies facing serious skills gap, it is no wonder 81% of the recruiting pros say upskilling and reskilling employees will be an important factor shaping the future of recruiting over the next 5 years. But there is another reason why L&D, that is learning and development, is gaining more attention. Employers understand that offering learning opportunities will be critical to advancing diversity and inclusion. In fact, when LinkedIn asked members how they would like to see organizations be more inclusive or underrepresented groups, increasing professional development and advancement opportunities was the number one answer in several countries, including India, Brazil, Italy, Mexico, and Japan. Learning will be a compelling driver for candidates, not just employers and employees. If I join your company, will you help me develop new skills? Will you offer me a clear path to advancement? Will you help me grow even if I only stay at your company for a couple of years? These are the kinds of questions candidates are asking, and they will only get louder in the future. In the years ahead, candidates won't just be thinking about a given job, but whether that employer is the right career destination. This feels especially true for Generation Z, but holds true across the globe workforce. Advancement and skill development were the number 4 and 5 top priorities for all candidates. The bottom line, creating a culture of learning and focusing of internal mobility isn't just a must-have to engage and retain current employees. It will be critical to the success of your recruiting efforts. Conclusion: while every prediction in this report may not bear out precisely as described, preparing today will leave you better equipped for whatever tomorrow holds. Change is coming to the world of recruiting, but that doesn't mean you will be a passive observer. As a talent leader, you are in a position to reshape the way the world works and ensure it works for everyone. Ultimately, the future of recruiting belongs to those willing to build it. And as a change maker at your organization, the future of recruiting belongs to you. Wish you best of luck. We are business consultants based in Pakistan. If you need to accelerate your organizational performance and transform your company to meet the upcoming business challenges for a better tomorrow, please contact us for a turnaround. You can find us at rabbaniresearch.net. Trust Rabbani for quality competence. Thank you so much.